But what we do want to talk about is the strength of the Australian teams against the New Zealand Super Rugby teams so far this year, the potential ramifications on that when we get to the internationals. Have a look at this. So this is effectively the Aussie teams v New Zealand teams ladder, I suppose you could call it, from an Aussie team's perspective. So the Brumbies, they've won 50% of their games against New Zealand teams. Look at the Reds, who have won 3 of their 5 games against New Zealand teams. This is more impressive than we have seen, you could argue, in any sort of recent years. How does that bode for the Wallabies?
Fantastic. I'm loving it. I'm loving how close this competition is. I say every time I'm here, but I watch every single game because I know it's going to be close. Like the Reds have won 3 of their 5 against New Zealand teams, and I was saying it off camera earlier. It's because most of their Wallabies have come back, and yes, they've got those rules where you can play overseas and then come play for the Wallabies. So those guys have gone back to their respective contracts in France or in Japan or wherever they are. But the bulk of them have stayed. And, you know, we've had a lot of players leave in senior positions amongst the New Zealand teams. And so I do think the Australians have got better, but also the New Zealand teams probably haven't progressed at the same rate after that World Cup drain.
I'll say 2 things, 9 and 10. I think the Australian sides across the board are better. I think we're seeing some young talent come through. But what do you do at 9 or 10? I haven't seen, you know, they're good, but I haven't seen, wow, this guy's standout. Lolosio's probably the number 1. What are you going to do at 9? And if you don't sort that out at test level, you're going to struggle. And I think that will be, you know, the biggest decision.
I look at the Brumbies and the way they've performed this year, and I think they're closest in terms of the style that they play that will suit the international game for the Wallabies. And remembering that they've got a different coaching staff now. So the shambles that was Eddie Jones and his coaching staff, we had guys quit before the Rugby World Cup. They've now got Mike Cron involved. Laurie Fisher, who's from the Brumbies, who's a legend of the game there. Yeah. I think if you look at them and the way that they've played and some of the key personnel they've got, and particularly a guy like Rob Valentini, he's, for me, world class, right? So I'm looking at some of their players and they needed to elevate themselves to world class to compete. Taylor, JK, Kimberley, I look at them and go, this guy's world class. They've got something they can build around. There's no doubt, I think Tom Hooper's another one. We've seen the emergence of a guy like Tim Ryan. So you all of a sudden you start building this bank of players, but also they've got a new head coach. And I think everyone's, I suppose, been given an opportunity, presented an opportunity, and I like what I'm seeing. But does it transition across the international game? We talk about it a lot here, whether it fits. Does the Super Rugby
represent? Hear my question?
9 and 10?
Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing, they've got a number of 9s. Nick White's been there and done that.
But that's do you go back to Nick White, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, or you go back to Nick White.
Well, he's actually got options. I think he's got players who have put their hand up, Taylor.
Yeah, there's, as you say, Tate McDermott, Jake Gordon, not Tim Ryan, Tate McDermott as well. And look, it is hard to pick who is going to be that good 9 because they don't have a solid 9-10 combination across all teams. I think there's other people putting their hands up. But if I was to pick the Wallabies 9, I think I'd still go with Nick White. Yes, he's playing for the Force, but the Force, you know, they haven't been the best team, but he still has stood out playing for the Force as well. So I think I'd still pick him. But you've got like Kalani Thomas coming through. You know, he's a really good young player. So they've got a whole lot of 9s, but I don't know who would be next up.
So you go Nick White, Lolosio. Carter Gordon's obviously going to the Titans, is he?
Well, they've had a combination already at the Brumbies, right, for a long, long time before Nick White's headed across. I just think I think they've got more options than they've had. Justin Marshall sat on this panel for a few weeks and enjoyed your seat, by the way. But he talked about the fact he felt they were playing tougher, you know, the Australian sides, and were really fronting up. Now, there was a couple of performances in New Zealand which didn't support that, but the Brumbies go home and they play well back in front of their own crowd. Filippo Dungunu's one for me, for the Rebels, you know, has put his hand up in the midfield, who was good for the Reds, has been a lot better for the Rebels. I think we've got to take into account that all of a sudden they're going to be a lot more prepared, better prepared with the coaching staff that's coming on board. And the one area that they're going to have to make some gains is up front. And I think Mike Cron, with all of his IP and knowledge and what he's bringing, I think is going to get that pretty quickly.
I love the physical battle too as well. I mean, like Matt Fesler, Kyle Tazano, I think, has been really good. Yes, he's with the Force too. Liam Wright. There's a lot of guys putting their hands up in that physical. Yeah, Harry Wilson's another one too.
Dog. Junkyard dog on the wing. We would never have had a winger in our day called a junkyard dog.
No way. You see how we tackle?
Well, we have. We've witnessed it.
We saw that just
the interesting thing about him is he's got out-and-out pace. And if you can get him the ball, it's always, hey, Goldie, marking someone with real pace like this, it's like scary.
So what I want to ask at the crux of this matter, really, is this young talent that you're spotting, this talent you're spotting in the Aussie teams, are they enough to make you feel, oh, actually, this Wallabies team could be a little bit ominous when it comes to Bledisloe Cup? Will they be competitive? How competitive will they be?
They don't have a choice. They got Eddie in and he said, I'm taking these young guys. They don't have the experience that we have to lean on, even though we've lost a lot of our experience. You think about it, you know, Barrett. You know, you think about the experience that we've still got in our team, you know, Anton Leonard-Brown. We've got experience right across the park. I think Joe has to rebuild this side, and he has to pick a bunch of young guys and go, I'm giving you the faith in this selection, let's go.
I think there's going to be an element of unpredictability too, because as you said, he has to rebuild that team. I don't think he's going to pick a lot of the same players that Eddie Jones did, because a lot of people were surprised at the squad that went to the Rugby World Cup. So I think there's going to be probably the biggest raft of changes we've seen to a Wallabies team in a long time.
So you've got Joe Schmidt over here, you've got Scott Robertson over here. For you, how do you then see Razor's All Blacks shaping up? How do you expect them to play?
Well, that's a significant question, is what's Razor's approach to the international game? Given where he was with this great Crusader outfit who were dominant in a number of critical areas up front, and is he expecting to use that as a weapon and the balance of the way that he played the game? And clearly, Damien McKenzie, who's got the inside running, you'd have to say at 10, is not Richie Mo'unga. Doesn't quite play the same as Richie Mo'unga. But I think it's critical, and a lot of it comes down to me is how he sees Super Rugby. He's been inside it for a long, long time. How does he judge the form? How do you judge it, Taylor? The form of players? Because quite often we've said, oh, but it's not the international game.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Some players really stand up in international rugby, and then in Super Rugby they haven't really been standing out. And it's just, you guys would know what the black jersey does to a player when you put it on. I think at the moment when you're looking at form, and I think he's got to pick on form at the moment, being a new coach, and but at the same time I think he would also look at the experience. But it's about getting the combination right, isn't it? You know, there's some key positions where you have to pick probably some newbies, and who are you going to pick? Well, it has to be on form.
I think the thing that will influence Razor on how he wants to play, which was your original question, is I think he'll be pushing for the future. What does the next innovation look like? But he has to find a balance between winning now, get his regime off to a good start. You know, we've got a solid base of experience that he can lean on, and I think he'll lean on those early. How he wants to play, I'm hoping we're going to see some innovation around style of play, but I know he was really affected by South Africa winning the World Cup again around their whole kicking game. You know, he's been right through those stats. You've got to kick it here, got to kick it there. So it'll be really interesting. I still think we have DNA in the black jersey, and that's we want to play an expansive, beautiful style of game, and I think that will be the base of it.
Well, Taylor, you touched on it in terms of some of the positions that are kind of up for grabs, and there will be real question marks over. One of them is fullback, and how's this from some stats? We've got them on the board at the moment, and this to me, when I saw it, was actually quite eye-opening. So this is a list of players who have played fullback in Super Rugby and their All Black Test caps. All right, so between all of the New Zealand players who have played at fullback this Super Rugby season, only 2 have a Test cap to their name. Sean Stevenson, Josh Ioanes was at first 5, not at fullback.
None of those, one of those for me will be in the side. And I think what I would do is I'd go Ruben Love, Barrett, and Barrett. And as your so you know that you've got one of the world's best rugby players coming back. I think Ruben Love has been outstanding all year. I think he's got pace to cover. You know, I think this kid has got a massive future there. And then I'd go Beauden Barrett, and then I'd go my third backup at a pinch is Geordie Barrett.
There's someone that's not on that list actually though who has played fullback, and that's Stephen Perofeta. He hasn't played fullback this year, but he's played multiple times and has more tests than those guys that were on there. But it is kind of worrying when Josh Ioane, you know, hasn't played a test since 2019, and Sean Stevenson has only played one there. But I'm with you, Ruben Love is, I think, one of the future players.
So in this calculation though, JK, what happens if he needs Beauden at 10?
I don't think he will. I think he'll do Damien. I love the way Damien plays. I keep saying this. I think he brings a different dynamic. And I think Stephen Perofeta will be the backup. And Beauden will be, like, he might do something on the bench. Like, he might go Beauden starting at fullback and he's going to cover 10 and I'm going to put someone else on the bench.
So I look at this, and ultimately Beauden Barrett's form last year was outstanding in the All Black jersey. He really rediscovered, and I think he's an out-and-out 15 for me now, to answer your question. And he comes back, and he's available, as are Ardie Savea and Sam Cane, for the Test matches against England. That's the way their contracts and their sabbaticals were designed. They could come back and be available. And they've finished in Japan now. They didn't make the playoffs. Voice de Corridor. Can you give us 1 second? Because I just want to finish this. So then you talk about the balance of how you want to play. Will Jordan will be back in the Rugby Championship, right? So that's the idea, the plan around him. I think he's our next best fullback.
Can I tell you now? I've got to wait.
Oh, you got to wait. You got something. It better be really
No, you
good.
go. You go.
Really good.
You go.
I like Ruben Love,
very
absolutely.
polite.
But I think all of a sudden we've got to find a balance of what we're going to have on the wing as well, and the competition in that position. When you've got Sevu Reece, you've got Caleb Clark in great form, Mark Talia's full on. Moni Narawa. You know, all of a sudden you've got to find the balance and have that guy. Is there someone who can play wing and fullback? That's your Will Jordan. That's a real luxury to have. All right, so I agree with you. Ruben Love to me is well and truly in the picture. But we have got guys, and particularly when Will Jordan comes back, the mix is going to be critical.
How good is Proctor going?
So good.
But anyway, I'll get back to that. Voice de Corridor is that Sam Cane is injured.
Well, hopefully he's not.
And out.
Well, hopefully he's
for
not.
quite a time.
Oh, hopefully he's not.
That's Voice de Corridor, so that's whispers in the corridor.
Is that the end of the world, though, when you look at some of the players who have been playing well?
Well, I think that, I love the Hurricanes loose forward trio, the young boys. I think they're all going exceptionally well. But I think in that position, I would like to see, you're saying, look, I make it, but I still think Ardie's going to come into it. I think Sam...
He's the World Player of the Year.
Yeah, totally.
Pretty sure he's going to come into it.
He's going to come back into it, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think we need to start grooming those young guys as Sam's going to be injured.
Yep.
I get them out there.
I think there's a massive competition for the 7 jersey right now. Massive competition with Dalton Papali'i. You've got Peter Lakai, obviously the development he's going through. Duplessis Kirifi has been...
Do you put Ardie back to 7 and then start going... Because, he was
8.
7.
Oh, 7 up.